Hi, everybody. This is S.J. Thomason with Christian-apologist.com, where truth matters. And I'm here today with Ruby Spacek. And we were both on the Modern Day Debate about 4 years ago. And we talked about if sex work should be destigmatized. I took the position that no, it should definitely still be stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
She had the opposite position. But then she just contacted me on X, and we decided that we were going to go onto a video. So she said she has a change of heart on this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just really interested to hear about where that all came from. So I think I'm just going to let Ruby tell you what happened, because I don't actually know. And this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. You know, you'd been on my radar that I wanted to talk to you again. And I haven't. So initially our disagreement, I think at its core was like, you believe that there was something like intrinsic to sex work that is like damaging to women. And my standpoint was the damage was from the stigma, but I don't believe that anymore. And that's for a few reasons. At the time when I was had a very materialist, atheistic perspective and viewed just humans as animals. And I didn't believe in like spirituality or anything of that nature. I was just like, what is spirituality? But just like a deep feeling, like, it just wasn't clicking until I had been on this path of doing like online sex work on and off, but I also had like severe drug issues, as do many people in the industry, which was one of your points. But like my pushback was that I did not think that it was intrinsic to sex work, but now I do believe that humans have some kind of intrinsic spiritual experience, and that can be nourished or harmed. And I feel like I was constantly putting myself in a really dark space of sex addiction and porn addiction and all these drug addiction. And these are all things that like people say aren't intrinsic to the industry, but I don't know. I'm more of your side now. So that's kind of the short of it.
Oh, I think that's great. I think that's great. And because it is, I mean, it's one of those things where to me, it's a dangerous industry. And it's also, there's a lot of times it's usually women who are in the industry. Obviously it could be men
Yes.
too, but a lot of times it's women who've been manipulated by men to
Mm-hmm.
get into the industry, or maybe they're even being trafficked. I mean, there could be
Mm-hmm.
some pretty scary things going on. I just saw this movie last year on trafficking and child trafficking and how awful that is. And so I worry about that. Some women, against their own choices, they don't want to be there. This is the last thing they want to do, but they're sort of stuck. And so that's always something that's scary. And
Yeah.
so let me, when you say this spiritual, and I think you might have said that you had a spiritual experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what happened?
So, well, I'd had like one other kind of like weird spiritual experience that was unexplained, but it's just like whatever. And then what really things changed in June of 2023, I had relapsed on fentanyl. I was addicted to opioids, smoking crack, the full shebang. I was completely off the rails for a couple years when prior to that I had 8 years of clean time. So around the time you met me, I was like doing fairly well, but I was still trying to make things work that weren't working. Like I wanted to believe that like there was nothing about sex work that's intrinsically harmful to me, but I keep going down this path and getting the same results of like uh having this experience where I'm reaching out to drugs to cope with reality and to cope with like when I was a stripper, I only did like in-person sex work, like dancing at a club for 2 weeks, but I had to be on a lot of substances to go through with that. So it was always like tied together for me, but I thought that was a me thing and not like an industry thing, even though it's so rampant in the industry. I wanted in my mind to disentangle that. And like, now we just think that it's impossible to disentangle and that I do have a spiritual experience. And it's very like, I've tried going back to doing online, like Chatterbait and these like websites where it's like not hardcore, but you're still like naked and doing stuff. I tried going back and it just felt constantly like this very dark thing. And like, I just felt like I wanted to move more towards like light and like higher values. And I found myself reconnecting with like Christianity, which is like the religion I was raised with. And I'm still like skeptical, but anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Basically the spiritual awakening happened. I was detoxing from fentanyl on a friend's couch because I tried rehabs, spent $60,000 in rehab. And it's like, these things weren't working. So once again, my life is falling apart. I'm detoxing on a friend's couch, and it's horrific. It's like unimaginable pain and suffering. It's like being set on fire and like submerged in ice water at the same time, and it's unbearable. So I was like literally on her floor, like writhing in pain, and like just like, basically having like that cry out to God moment of like, what the fuck? Like, I need something. And then I had like, all of a sudden I felt like this warmth and like extreme spiritual wellness fill me that I'd never felt before. And it was like my first real time feeling like spiritually well. And so for the first time, I felt physically so horrific. Like the most suffering that you can imagine is what fentanyl withdrawal feels like. There's a reason it's so dangerous and sick. Like, but I felt spiritually well. And I was like, for the first time, I realized like why all these addicts turn to like God and this like these higher values, because you need something. You can't do it on your own. But I still struggle with what to make of making sense of it all, So yeah, but that's basically what happened.
I think that's great. I mean, I'm actually really happy that you're alive. I know a lot of people who've not made it when they've gotten on fentanyl, including I was just on Facebook maybe 10 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago, and I just spotted a picture of a daughter of a couple that I know that they lost her when she was about, I think, 21, 22, and she was supposed to be having some other drug. I don't remember if it was heroin or what it was, but it was laced with fentanyl, and then she ended up dying.
Yep.
And it was provided to her by a friend of hers that didn't know that it was laced. And so it didn't realize that either he or she was setting her up. And so unfortunately now they've lost her, and there's a lot of cases of that. So just the fact that you made it through is phenomenal. And so and if you can, I guess you want to keep, and I want to go back because I didn't re-listen to the video that we made at Modern Day Debate. I probably should have, because I would have heard your history, but that might be good that I didn't, because now I want to see, you said return to Christianity. And as I recall, I seem to recall that you were raised as a Christian, and you were kind of raised in a home that had a lot of good values and that kind of thing. And so can you recount that a little bit for who's ever listening?
Yeah. I had like a really idyllic childhood. For like definitely for my early childhood up until like age 10 or 11. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad had a good job working for the state, but he had a back injury and got prescribed Oxycontin, as many people were in the early 2000s. And that devolved into a terrible opiate addiction that really threw my childhood into chaos and moving around a lot and a lot of instability. And he was in and out of the picture, and he's doing fine now. I saw him just the other day at a cousin's wedding. So, he seems to be doing a lot better, but it's been like a struggle for him. So that was, and both my parents, they both worked in the church too. They were like worship leaders in the band. He played guitar, my mom played keyboard. So when I say raised in the church, I was like very much just like in the church every day. It was a huge part of my upbringing. And my mom is very spiritual, very like connected to God and Jesus, and is like always praying for people, and it's like really into that. And I just, didn't get it. And like around the time my family shit was falling apart, I had like an existential meltdown and started having a lot of mental health issues, like in like early teens. And that's like carried on into adulthood, and I've coped with that through various unsuccessful ways. So this was the trying something different. And just accepting that, like, there are human experiences I can't explain. And because for me, I always felt insecure if I can't like debate something, like I don't even want to stand on it. I can't debate the God things. I don't even know if I can, I have so many mixed feelings and like a lot of ideological rigidity in my mind that I'm trying to sort through at the same time. So I don't know. I thought you'd be an interesting person to talk to, just having that experience. And also I know it's like, it feels nice sometimes to know that some points got across in a debate when you think they're falling on deaf ears, so I like to loop back around if anyone made a point that like resonated with me even years after the fact. I think it's nice to, let them know usually.
I do too. I think it's great. And I definitely think it's interesting. You say your mom prays. I bet you your mom's been praying for you.
Oh, a lot. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. And it just shows that, I mean, I think prayers work, and I believe what the Bible says about the lost sheep, and maybe you were kind of a lost sheep, but Jesus does whatever he can to bring you back and or maybe even kind of like the prodigal son a little bit. So when you come back, he's just standing there like with open arms, just, that's great. You've come back, and that's all that anyone focuses on. So it's really good. Like, I love that story when you realize when you're sitting there and all of a sudden you get that really good feeling that, hey, there's something here.
Yeah.
So so you were raised in the church. Was there like a point that you just decided atheism is the way to go, or?
It wasn't a point. I think I had never made a conscious buy into like God or religion. I had never really reckoned with that belief set on my own, since it was something I was raised in. So when I did start to reckon with beliefs, I was, very anarchistic. I was a punk kid. I was reject tradition, reject religion, reject authority. I was very, very, very on this extreme fringe left, kind of punk space was kind of where I got a lot of my questioning from, was this idea of challenge everything. So that's what I challenged that. And I didn't find that I could make a good case for God, in an intellectual way. And, you know, I, so I dropped that belief, and I didn't revisit it because I thought I was like, how can I know of all the religions, like why this one? I've always, it's like, there's so many unanswered questions that I struggle with.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I keep putting my mute on because I can hear my two sons out there. They both just came into the kitchen and they're both yelling out there. So I'm like, I told them I was on the line, but I don't think they're. So if you hear loud noises in the background, just know that I don't know what they're doing. It should stop in a minute, I would think. They can't be this loud forever. So no, I think that's interesting because what you're saying when you say this whole idea of rejecting authority, I did a study just a couple of years ago in 2022 where I gathered data from the World Value Surveys and I isolated different generations. So I had the older generations, mine, which is X, and the boomers and the silent generation as one group. And then I had the younger generations, Y and Z, as the other group. And I isolated the United States as about 2,200 or 2,300 respondents. And I looked at if there were generational differences in the justifications of things like prostitution and abortion and justifying cheating on taxes or stealing or there was a couple other things, but anyway, or their relationship to authority, like if they felt like God is important, if they felt like patriotism was really important. And I found in all of those that I just mentioned, there was a statistically significant difference in that the younger generation was more likely to justify ethically questionable things and had less importance in God and had less patriotism. And so I thought, wow, that's my two kids. I've got two sons, like they're in that generation. Why is that? And I think maybe it's just the internet or something that leads you to kind of want to just reject authority and rebel, but you're not alone. I think you're actually more of the norm in your generation.
Well, I think there's always like that push pull with like the older and younger generations. But I think that at least what I've noticed in like the culture is we have these pendulum swings towards more conservatism than towards, more liberalism. And we had a pendulum swing in the 90s and like 80s towards like Nancy Reagan and like Christian conservative like values. And then the people who grew up in that time started pushing back against that. So what you're actually starting to see with some of the newest, like youngest generation is people rediscovering conservative values and that almost becoming more countercultural, because it's hard to view, certain things as countercultural when they're being co-opted by multi-billionaire like corporations and whatnot to sell products, which like a lot of liberal and protest ideals are used to like sell products or whatever, which isn't to say that they're nonsense, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. But.
No, I think you're right. I think there is something with the younger generation. Some people have been saying that the rebel position now is to take the conservative values. That's pretty surprising. So
I mean, it feels like that to me in myself. It feels like a rebellion. Like now I'm rebelling against what I built my life up towards, which was a life built around like a very hedonistic and utilitarian like view of the world and how humans maximize pleasure. Like the goal is to maximize pleasure, minimize suffering. Like I just really took that to its logical conclusion, and it brought me a lot of unhappiness. But I have hope for the younger generation. But I do think the internet has brought us into this like state where we can't agree on any kind of collective reality anymore. And I just don't know how we're going to get past that, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the internet definitely has, it's actually, I think it makes people more divided. And I think even the 24-hour news stations, those make people very divided. And the fact that they're so obvious about who their candidates are and all this kind of stuff, it's just, it's awful. So I'm kind of, similarly to you, I grew up in a Reagan household where my parents loved Reagan and we were big Republicans. And then in the 90s, I decided that Clinton was smarter than the other candidate. And so I became a Democrat and I started supporting Clinton. And then I supported Obama, voted for Obama twice. And then I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And then in 2017, I had my wait a second, I don't like the Democratic Party anymore. So I kicked them to the curb, wrote a bunch of blogs about it, made a couple videos, and decided I'm independent. I wouldn't say I'm Republican. I wanted to say I was independent, but I tend to lead. Now I was very liberal back then. I thought I was liberal about certain things, but I realized my values are actually conservative and on a lot of things, but except for I support the environment. I support a lot of causes. I would love it if we had universal health care, even though I don't think it's possible. But on that same side, now I'm more conservative and I'm probably going to vote for Trump, although I don't, people watching this will be like, but I'm probably going to vote for Trump because I think that he might be able to get us out of war. And I think he's very focused on that. And I think he's assembled a really good team of people with RFK and Elon Musk. I actually like all that stuff. And so it's kind of funny. I feel like they're kind of the rebels in a way.
I know. In a weird way, they are in going up against like larger, more established media institutions, even though these are people who have like a huge amount of influence. I used to this was the first election ever where even 1% of me considered maybe not voting Democrat. Just even let my mind go there. It's the first time, and I still am probably, going to vote for Kamala, but it's the first time where I'm really thinking I don't know that the Democrats are better right now. And I do like Trump's kind of anti-interventionist and being one of the only presidents with no new wars. And that stuff matters too. He actually does have some things I can get on board with, which is, it's, and I've grown to find him more amusing and less scathing as I found him before, but I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm, one of my closest friends voted for him in one of the last elections. And in the past, I would have thought that meant you were a Nazi, but I'm just so thankfully past that point of being so, judgmental and just assuming everyone who doesn't agree with me is evil. It's just really dumb. Oh, you're still muted.
I agree with you on Trump derangement syndrome. I don't think I ever had that, but in 2016, I was actively out there talking against him. I was so against him in 2016.
Oh, me too.
I was shocked at myself at 2017, 2018. I was watching him and I was like, I like a lot of the things he's doing. And somehow we're not in war. And somehow, and then he got shot and he was still standing up there. And I thought, oh my, who is this guy? I was all on board. We have a Trump flag in the garage, but nobody's seen it yet, but we were literally buying the Trump flag 1 hour before he was shot. My husband and 2 kids and I were out there buying the Trump flag.
Wow. So
we get home and he's on TV and we're I'm watching it and I hear bing, bing, bing. I saw it live. It was crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I saw it after the fact, but I still couldn't believe that. And he handled it really well. I just feel for a long time, I didn't let myself see any of the wisdom to conservative values and and seeing things that could for a long time, I had this also ideas of motherhood is that was never something that I saw for myself ever. I was an anti-natalist. I had a whole fucking philosophy around it. I was very not into any of that. Never saw the appeal of it at all until kind of super late in the game. And now I'm I see how important it is to create something like a legacy, a tradition, a family structure that you can count on, because life is long. It's great to party in your 20s and do a lot of drugs and be a stripper, but now that I'm in my 30s, I'm seeing I went to my cousin's wedding and I'm seeing all these people who made very different choices to me that I thought were so lame, so corny. Oh, that's so great, you're all have babies, but now I see them so happy with their kids, and it's I don't want to say I envy it because I don't have any kind of negative feeling towards them, but it does make me think I just never saw that appeal and now I do. So it's weird how your perspective changes over time.
Yeah. Have you been back in a church by chance, or your parents' church?
Well, we since left the church we went to. It was we moved so many times since then. It's not nearby, but I did go to a service with a friend in New Haven where I lived semi recently. And I've been wanting to go back, but it's a little intimidating. And like, I'm still squeamish about all of it because I don't know, it's so foreign to me. But I'm still in like this kind of exploratory phase, and I've been like just reading. I enjoy just like reading the Bible like every day, and I'm just kind of like rolling with it and seeing what happens. And what's been happening is like a lot of my prayers have been answered, where I like really struggled with motivation and cleanliness, and like I was able to finally clean my room, get tons of garbage out, stuff I've been putting off for years. So it's like, it's like not the hugest miracle, but it's a miracle in my life in like a small way.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Jordan Peterson?
Yes. I actually,
You,
oh my gosh, I might see him. I have some friends who are trying to get me to go to DC for a rally that he's going to be speaking at. And I'm tempted because I used to think he was like public enemy number one. And now, I've done this full U-turn, and I kind of, I like a lot of his work, and I think he's been misrepresented broadly. I don't think he's an evil character or like a bad actor. That's I
is
guess
the
I'm a
rally,
fan.
is it the rally tomorrow? The one that's with Brett Weinstein?
Yes, and I would love to see it. Like, I used to hate the intellectual dark web, but I like got so into them. These are people I've been listening to podcasts forever. So like I'm torn about going because I really do like, I'm starting a job this week. I shouldn't like be traveling all over. It's not in the finances really. So, but I don't know. I am kind of tempted. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Is it far? How long is it? I can't even talk. How long of a drive would it be?
I think it's like 4 or 5 hours from me. And I have some friends who are driving down, but I had like kind of a falling out with them. It's kind of a complex, layered situation. So, yeah, but I'm playing it by ear. So who knows?
That'd be.
I get to see him.
I'm definitely gonna, if it's live or anywhere on TV or on the YouTube, I'm definitely gonna be watching from afar. I'm flying to Denver tomorrow, so I can't make it to that. But
hey, are you on the East Coast too?
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
Or anything? Oh, Florida. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I've got to go to Denver tomorrow for a conference. So AACSB, so it's our accreditor, and so doing that. So I like your story. I think it's great. And so I think just keep doing what you're doing. I like the idea that you read the Bible. And the reason I said Jordan Peterson is because you said you cleaned your room. And in his 12 rules for life, I think one of them was to clean your room.
Exactly. Well, and it seemed, I know. And that's probably one of the reasons I hated him, because I was just, the way I am in life is I'll just do everything but the obvious path. I'm like, I have to do it in my own stubborn, windy fucking road instead of, just listening to the obvious. But for a long time, I've struggled with mental health issues, and I don't know what to make of that, but I've struggled for whatever reason with keeping a cleanly house and cleanly room and keeping up to date with tasks. And I've struggled with employment this year, and, but it's getting better. So you just keep trying.
Yeah. No, I think get up every day and keep doing the same thing and hold your shoulders back and all that kind of stuff. I like what he says. I mean, I think people get hope out of that sort of idea, just the small steps.
Yes.
So if you had to pick say you said you've been reading the Bible, which books do you tend to read? Is it mostly out of the New Testament, or what do you?
I just did the New Testament like front to back, and then I'm revisiting the Old Testament, but I find myself like struggling more with the Old Testament, especially the books that are very like, or the parts that are very much like genealogy and stuff that I find hard to like read through. But I really love like Psalms. I really love, I was reading Jobs. I don't even know.
Job.
What I was, Job. Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm still a little newbie to these things, but that's what I was reading last night. And, I find I mostly resonate a lot with like, the New Testament, Jesus. I always liked, his teachings, and it's always been something relatable to me that like Jesus didn't judge the prostitutes. He, he would judge the sin and all that, but he would never judge them for being in that position, and gives everyone a chance at redemption. Like, I love that idea, obviously, and it's like, I do believe in redemption. I do believe that people can change, and I've seen it many times in my own life. So there's a lot of, like, at minimum, I thought, like, even if this all is like totally fiction, I do think it's good to reflect on higher values, higher wisdom, and the teachings of the Bible at minimum tend to be positive and to help guide me towards a more fulfilling life and less short-term gratification,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think the other thing is, I mean, what you're saying about Jesus definitely is true. And I think if you keep looking into it, the light will keep growing. Like the light just gets brighter. And so you can kind of get to the point where you're just totally into it and that you're offering up. Like the thing is, when you said you were suffering so much when you're on the couch and the fentanyl, when you were trying to come off that, and in the faith that I have right now, it's like a lot of people that are saints in like I actually left the Baptist church and now returned to the Catholic church of my upbringing. And so one of the things the saints always say is, when you're suffering, offer it up, offer it up. And you think, what do you mean offer it up? Well, you say, okay, anytime I've suffered in my life, Lord, I want to offer it up to help somebody else's soul or something like that. And he can use that. Like, it sounds weird, but they're like, he can use that. So
Absolutely. And I do believe that a lot of my suffering has guided me in my purpose and things that my family's been through. We're starting a nonprofit to focus on helping other, families who have struggled with either the prison system or mental health care. So I do think a lot of, what if you're struggling to find a purpose is like, looking at your own suffering to guide you, because I've become an expert in addiction, unfortunately. So maybe I can help someone else with it.
yeah. Yeah. Or that you maybe go to the AA or something like that, or one of those different kind of addiction groups. And they always say in the 12 steps or whatever the steps are, I think one of them is finding God. So,
yes. It's all about higher power. They've like made it less religious because, they try to keep it open. So they'll leave it to just be God or like a higher value, or you could say a group of drunks, God. They say as like a joke, like the meeting is your God, a group of drunks, whatever it is, you have to have something bigger than yourself, and that never really clicked with me until it did, I guess.
Yeah. Now, when you were looking and you talked about spiritualism and spirituality and that kind of stuff, did you ever look at the other sides of spirituality, like witchcraft or the occult or any of that kind of stuff?
My mom probably freaked me out about all that stuff too much. Like she always was like, don't do a Ouija board, like, so I never felt, well, I've had friends who've like gotten into like witchcraft, and I looked into like that kind of like new age stuff, but I was more in the like the psychiatry lane, self-help, like, that zone, more than like a zone of like, new age spirituality or whatever.
Yeah, I was kind of like that too for a while. I wasn't into witchcraft or anything like that, but I was into the idea like Celestine prophecy, and I thought Eastern faiths were so exotic. And I looked at it was James Redfield who wrote that, but people like what's that one guy's name? Deepak Chopra.
Deepak Chopra, yeah.
Yeah, and Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer's got Your Sacred Self. It's all about the self, and so it's very self-focused. And at the time when I was reading it, I thought, oh, this is so fascinating, so interesting. And then later on, looking at it now, like looking back on it, I'm like, what was I so focused on the self for? I'm supposed to focus on others.
Yeah, and that's a big mistake. That's like a lot of my experience of like failure in the psychiatry or like the mental health care system is just like a lot of ruminating on past hurts, rehashing, and there needs to be a more of a push, towards serving others. And for me, I feel like I've coddled myself too much, and both of my parents were highly, highly like permissive, and I moved out when I was 16. So I never got a lot of that like kick in the ass style parenting. Like, no, you need to shape up. It's always, and it's beautiful. I've gotten so much unconditional love, and I'm so grateful for that. But I need to shape up, and I need someone to kind of like kick me in the ass and say like, this is, you're not meeting certain standards, like get it together.
You remind me, there's another thing in the Bible too with Jesus, and he's talking about, he says to Simon, he's got two debtors, I think it was, and one debtor owed say like $1 million, the other debtor owed $500,000, and he forgives them both, and he says, which one's going to be the most thankful? He said, well, the one who was $1 million. It wasn't $1 million, but whatever it was, some large debt, whatever. The one who had the large debt is going to be the most thankful. And he's like, you've judged correctly. And it's kind of a way of saying sometimes the people who were like Mary Magdalene had 7 evil spirits or something like that. And I think she might have been a prostitute. And then there were the other prostitutes was cleaning with her hair and stuff like that. And they're the ones who are the most thankful and happy. And so because he accepted them. So that kind of reminds me of a position, kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, I'm curious about Catholicism too, because I had connected with a couple other YouTubers who are Catholic, not in any kind of conventional way. Their channel's pretty crazy, but we did like a little e-girl Bible study, and they were coming from like a Catholic perspective, and it's a girl and her dad, and his dad, I guess, was a theology teacher at some point. So I've been like curious about Catholicism, and I love, you know, the appreciation of beauty that the Catholic Church has, and
Yeah, that's
elevates
what I
like
like.
beauty, and like it's awe-inspiring when you go into like a beautiful cathedral, and a lot of life is missing that. Everything is so, just like, look, here's tits, get horny, and nothing's like beautiful and mystical. It's like, I feel like we are missing a lot of that. And so I am curious about Catholicism. I'm still in my like exploratory, just kind of like getting warmed up to the idea that like, wow, like, do I really believe in God? It's like, it's still something it's hard for me to even like fully stand on. And then I'm like, sorry, God, like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry if I don't believe in you good enough. I don't know.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to come back. I mean, you're also reminding me of David. Have you ever heard of David Wood?
I'm not sure. No.
He is a sociopath, and he tried to kill. He was an atheist sociopath who tried to kill his dad, like with a hammer, tried to hit his head with a hammer,
Oh
and
my
somehow he
God.
didn't end up killing his dad, but he ended up going to prison. And while he was in prison, he decided he had a Christian. Somehow he had a Christian guy in jail with him, and so he decided he was going to do whatever he could to like outdo the Christian. And so the Christian was going to fast, and so he decided he was going to fast too, and all this kind of stuff. And he's developing all these arguments, and then all of a sudden one day he kind of has this aha moment and realizes, he's like, hey, he looks at all these religions. He's like, if there's one religion where God will actually forgive me, it's Christianity. So he's
Yeah,
got a really
right.
cool video on that.
Oh,
But
cool.
he's still,
Yeah,
he's
I'll
still
look
got
into
that. The sociopath idea is like they know the difference between right and wrong, but they just don't care. So it's just you don't have that care, which would be a really tough thing. But apparently it's like 1% to 4% of the population. So it's out there.
Yeah, it's scary. I've always been interested in like sociopaths because like I n- think I think I'm fairly empathetic. Like I tend to feel bad if other people feel bad. So that makes me want to avoid making other people feel bad. But in a way, I'm just looking out for myself because I feel bad if other people feel bad. So am I really more virtuous than a sociopath who just doesn't have that care? Like I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
World
No, I
into.
think it's really interesting. So if you had, like, if somebody asked me what brought me back to Christianity, because I brought me back, because I was, as I said, I was kind of fluttering around. I was a weak Christian, probably
Yeah.
in every heart, but it was C.S. Lewis's, I don't know if you know who C.S. Lewis is, but he wrote this book, Mere Christianity.
Didn't he write The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's why. Yeah, I was familiar. From that book, my mom was a big fan, and I looked him up recently because I know he. Well, I was looking into like Christian philosophers, and he came up, and I was a little confused because I was like, didn't know it's his story.
Yeah, no, that's how I came back. I was sitting next to a pastor on a plane, and he's asking me if I knew what I wanted to do. And I'm like, oh, I want to write a children's book like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And he's like, oh, did you know that C.S. Lewis wrote these adult books? And so when I read the C.S. Lewis Mere Christianity, it was like, it opened my eyes, because that part where he talked about Jesus didn't give us the choice. He's either a liar, he's a lunatic, or he's the Lord. And so he didn't say he's just a great moral teacher. And it's like, I always thought he was a great moral teacher. So so for me, that was just like the ding. And then that was one thing. And then it was and then I got books like Frank Turek's book, Stealing from God, and I got Reasonable Faith by William Lane Craig. And I started getting down the whole Protestant thing, and I probably read at least 100, if not 200 or 300 Protestant books on apologetics. So, and I did that because I had experiences, just kind of like you. I had experiences, and I needed to explain those. I needed those to make sense. But yeah, and I actually had a dark experience too once, like really dark, and it was because I did play with a Ouija board when I was young, and I did have, I did do some of the things I wasn't supposed to do, and it opened the door, and so that's what actually shook me out of my bed, if you want to say that, and into the door of a church.
Yeah. Damn.
So,
yeah, my mom, she was like so paranoid about like that kind of stuff. Even like when Harry Potter was around, I remember there's like suspicion around that, and I get it, because it's like, yeah, if all this stuff is real, like, and there is like a dark spirit world. And it's another thing for me is, it's like, as I warmed up to Christianity, I also just found like a lot of useful, like, to be useful at minimum as like a metaphor of like evil and God and this journey we have to like overcome, you know. And I found it useful to like describe addiction as like a demonic possession, because it's very confusing to experience. It feels like a hijacking. You're like
It's
gradually
definitely oppression.
hijacked.
Like if
Yeah.
you're an exorcist, the exorcist would call that oppression in a lot of cases. Like they're kind of like they've got a grip on you, but
Hmm.
they're not possessing you, but they've got this grip, you know? That's what they
Yeah, yeah. I don't. It's strange to experience. It's very disorienting because you can be like have this steadfast commitment to like quit and mean it and want it with all your heart, and then the next moment your brain just does the opposite thing, and it is confusing for everyone. I'm just so glad to like not be stuck in that anymore. Thank God.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And it's good you got a job this week and you're going off and doing things that you want to do. So I think like you're doing step by step, just moving back into it. And so,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and I think that you'll have more spiritual experiences. I'll bet you have a lot of them because it's funny because I've read, I haven't had as many spiritual, like I had a whole bunch of experiences around
Mhm.
2012, and even a really cool one, 2016, was I heard the audible voice of Jesus telling
Oh
me
wow.
not to do something I was going to do or thinking about. And so he basically, kind of showed me what's important in my life. It was like I saw this flash of events. It was amazing. And so, but I haven't had really too much since then. I mean, I get good feelings and stuff like that, but I haven't had like those kind of like massive
Yeah, like crazy.
experiences. And so I was reading about that, and I read that a lot of times in your spiritual walk, to open your eyes, Jesus will give you a bunch of stuff. And then, so you might get a bunch of things happening in the next few years. And then all of a sudden it might not seem like as many, but you still,
Hmm.
because you're already in there tight.
Yeah. Well, I have, you know, I just have a lot of gratitude for just having the minimum things. And I have a lot of excitement for the future of, because my life was in such chaos for so long. I never got to appreciate the normal joys of just like living in a clean space, having that
Mm-hmm.
stability, having a job, having stable relationships. Like, I've had a lot of like good friends over the years, but like, I'd like to settle down with like a romantic partner and, you know, hopefully late in the game, be able to start a family of my own someday, but absolutely not banking on it. Because I'm already 34 and it would depend on if I met someone, get off all my medication, and maybe that's just not my calling and I'm okay with that too. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. I mean, I met my husband at 32 and we married when I turned 36, or it was 36. Was I 36 when we got married? I forget, 35, I think. Well, whatever it was, I had my first baby at 36 and the second one at 37. And so,
Oh, okay.
so it's
See, everyone
possible.
online like it is on my dick anytime I talk about it. Sorry to speak so like vulgarly, but like people, the internet is like pretty hostile, and a big attack I get a lot is like, oh, you're old, your eggs are bad, blah blah blah, and it's like,
No.
yeah, I know it's so ridiculous because I know at 30, my aunt had my cousin at 39 and he turned out great. So I know I still have time and it's possible, but I just don't want to bank on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know like I'm moving towards stability, positivity, light, structure, all of those things, and whatever happens on the way is,
Mm-hmm.
great. I just feel very fortunate and blessed to have another opportunity to be there, and be connected to my family and friends again and be present when I disappeared for a couple of years and was just kind of like a zombie.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I think you're totally on the right path, and I think you're doing everything right. I'll bet you do meet. I mean, the other thing, my sister had her third child. She had her kids when she was later too, and she had her third one. She was 40, either 41 or 42. So,
Yeah,
like,
it absolutely happens. It's just the internet is.
yeah, don't listen to
I
those
think people are
fools.
just internet poisoned. I call it like they're too cynical about everything. They have no hope, no earnestness, no, all these. It's just really sad how people are online. Really, if you think about it.
Going back to Jordan Peterson, and maybe that you're going to go there tomorrow, and I hope it's on TV or somewhere that I can watch it because I'm very very jealous. I would love to be there, to be honest. But have you heard his wife's testimony? What happened to her?
Oh yes, yes, yes. Actually, yeah, I watched her, how she came back to Catholicism and she had her cancer. I did. I've been watching her podcast too. I like it. I watched both of them and the daughter too. I'm in the whole fucking family. Sorry to keep swearing. I'm used
Oh,
to
it's
being on
okay.
like channels where no one cares about anything. So like, sorry
No,
about
it's
that.
all good. It's all good. No, I listen to Michaela too every once in a while. So that's what happened. I think it was around 2016 or 2017. I started thinking to myself, because my husband has always been Republican. Like I married a Republican. And so he always would want Fox News on and stuff like that. And I would like, at first I was, oh gosh, just get this off. It's driving me nuts. And then after a while, I started listening to some of the things they were saying. I thought, they're right about that. Okay, well, they're right about that, but maybe I don't like them about this. But then I started listening to people like Michael Knowles and Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan, and I might as well just slide down the whole conservative. Like they all rolled me in.
So. Yeah, no, they absolutely do that, and people will call it like the alt-right pipeline, because it's like if you listen to them, then you're going to be like a Nazi, and it's like, no, not really, but people are just outrageous like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are people who are far right that definitely I don't want to have anything to do with. I don't like far left or far right. I don't like either of those groups. I think they're awful.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm just over all the like identitarian race politics and gender politics. It's just reached a really crazy state where people can't talk about just like basic collective reality. And if we can't do that, we can't fix any problems realistically. So,
yeah,
I
and
hope
victim
this, partisanship ends. Oh yeah, and the
whole victim thing. Like everyone, nobody wants to be a hero. Everybody wants to be a victim. It's like, where do we get that? I don't think victims are. I mean, obviously, some people actually literally are victims, but you don't want to play the victim when you're not really. You know what I mean?
That's bull because when you looked at like the intersectionist model and it became about who's like the most oppressed gives you a leg up to have your voice heard. And it turned into just like elevating certain voices and always like pushing other voices down in a way that ends up being kind of like sexist and racist in its own ways. Like,
yeah, I know. Sometimes you see people who say the ones who are most focused on race a lot of times seem like the biggest racist.
Yeah. And I was like that for a long time. And there is this kind of like babying of communities. There's babying of women and acting like, we are in all situations victim of men, and like anything that happens, I find that to be demeaning. To be truly empowered is to have the power to be accountable to your own behavior and actions and not be at the mercy of your surroundings and environment. That's like the opposite of empowered. But I see why they wanted to go that route and elevate people who are perceived as victims. It just went totally haywire.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, a lot of it comes from Marx. And so, because Marx was the one who set up the whole oppressor-oppressed thing in his book, Communist Manifesto. And so it's all about, okay, but his time it was based on class. And then somebody took that and attached it. And I think Susan's got here in the chat something about critical theory, but it's the idea of race. And so if you're born into, say, you're white because you have European heritage or something, it means that you're the oppressor just naturally by the skin color. It doesn't matter that you're raised in Appalachia like J.D. Vance was with no money and like by his grandmother. And it's like,
people are realizing this, like the white versus black doesn't really give you the full picture, because if you look at like, if you break it down even more, you could look at Ethiopian immigrants like out earning certain like white populations, and this white versus black, a lot of Black Americans are immigrants who came way after slavery too. So it's like but I don't know, that's its own mind web that I have to like untangle.
Yeah, well, I think it's just the idea that you want to. I think there was another study that they were looking at the values that a lot of people hold around the world, and one of the values was self. It was like holding oneself accountable, like kind of like the whole self accountability, personal responsibility, and how important that is. And I think that that's one value that is all over the world. It's in all the major world religions, according to this study, and it's in even atheists and humanists realize the importance of holding yourself accountable. And in that same study, they talked about the other things that you value, like thinking you're doing something that's for the greater good in some way, or just for a benefit of others, like that big focus. That's a pretty important thing. And I think if you stick with those kind of values, life becomes a little easier than when you don't, in some ways, meaning that you're just, you get up in the morning, you say, I'm going to get up every morning at 6 o'clock. That's just what I'm going to do. And then if I wake up at 6:30, I'm going to try it again the next day. I'm going to try 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You've got this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to keep trying. That's what I've been doing. It's like trying not to let my failures, like let me spiral into something else, and just try to be better the next day. And I have noticed like a positive payout of like being really strict about like living by certain moral guidelines so that I can experience spiritual peace, like not like no like bold-faced lying, no more like stealing. Like I used to steal like chapstick from Walgreens, and I was like, that's whatever. But like I'm trying to be just like really clear about what I will and will not do, what is
Mm-hmm.
acceptable behavior. And when I cross that line, you know, I'm putting myself in jeopardy, it feels like. So I have to be very strict about it.
You know, one of the things I do at my school is I oversee a coaching program, and we pair graduate students and sometimes undergraduates up with coaches who are professional, like community leaders who just want to give back. They all volunteer the time without even getting paid because they don't want to get paid because they don't want it to be transactional. But
Yeah.
one of the things that they do when they meet with people and they meet with our students, they meet with them 3 times. And each time the student has to create like here's my plan, here's my vision for myself. Like, here's where, like you're 34, you say, okay, when I turn 36,
Mm-hmm.
here's what I see for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe at 36, I won't be telling any lies. Like maybe I might tell one. They say we tell a lie each day. Like, I don't know who's gathering all this information, but
I know.
I'm like where they got that. But
Well, it's
anyway,
hard
so you
to
say,
like fully, like when I made a conscious, I had to make a very conscious choice. Like, it's not like even in addiction, I always felt like I can lie about drugs because I thought I was protecting other people from worrying about me. I had like a whole workaround for that, but I still would like try to live to some values. But especially now, I just, you know, you don't realize the little white lies that sometimes, like if I'm running late for something, I would notice I'd get there. I'd be like, oh, sorry, I couldn't find my keys. Or like something that was like an automatic weird little lie. And I was like, wait, no, it wasn't because I couldn't find my keys. It's because I managed my time poorly again. Like, you know, so I try
yeah,
to now just like own things as much as I can and just keep having like extreme accountability to like counteract the no accountability model that I had before.
yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I mean, I try to do that too. I'm trying to be like,
Mhm.
you know, you do say those little white lies sometimes, like I lost my keys when it was, you know, I think that's more common than people
Mhm.
realize. And then you realize you
Yeah.
catch
Yeah.
yourself. And that's in Jordan's book too, that 12 Rules for Life. So
Mhm.
it's probably a pretty good book. I know I read it at one point, but he's got another book that I wanted to read that he wrote after that has some other rules, I think. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I watched like, you know, dozens of hours of like just his podcasts, and I don't own any of his books. I've like looked up like PDFs online and like flipped through them, but you know, I feel like I've gotten the basics of his ideas just through listening to the podcast. And it's
mhm.
just a lot of really good advice that if you really take it to heart and enact it, you will see positive payouts. You know, for me, the payout has been feeling spiritually better and stronger so that I have the capacity to say no when there's a tempting situation. If my drug dealer drives by or something, like I now have like a little more strength, and I need that strength, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think so. I think that's very good. And I think if you get into the church, like figure out which church you want to go to, even if it's a Catholic church or if it's it's so funny because I've been through so many different doors because I was trying to figure out where my church home would be. And then I was in this Baptist church, and then I was thinking that was just the greatest church of all. And I was trying to convince all my Catholic friends that I grew up with they need to convert to Baptist faith. And and then and now I have to go back and
No,
like
you
be
go.
pro. Like I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I decided I was wrong now. My sister
Yeah,
stayed a Catholic the whole time, and she's like, "You can't just go decide that you're going to be a Baptist or you're going to be Lutheran." I'm like, "Why not? I did."
right?
So yeah.
Exactly. I have to still sort through that, but I am very curious about like Catholicism, and there's a lot of beautiful churches in my city that, you know, I definitely want to check out for sure.
Oh, I love that's one thing about. I mean, I absolutely. That's one major reason why I came back is the beautiful churches because
Mhm.
you know the church I was going to in the Baptist faith converted to a basketball court during the week, and it was like you know, I mean, I like
Yeah.
multi-purpose, and at the time I contributed money to that because I thought it was a good cause and stuff. But then I look at the whole. Well, the church kind of should be more sacred. There should be an altar. Where's the
Yeah.
communion? Like, I want to get the Eucharist, the actual body and blood of Jesus.
Mhm.
And so there were all these reasons. So I ended up, and plus now I have to go to confession once. It's not easy to be a Catholic because you have to go to confession sometimes. And so I have to go
Mhm.
once a month. That's a rule I gave to myself. And
Mhm.
forcing me to on first Saturday of each month, I have to go to confession and like spill it all out there in front of a priest, but I'm behind a screen so he can't see me, but still.
Yeah.
So
I kind of treat my YouTube channel as a confession, you know, because I
well,
use
that's
like
the
an
thing.
alias, so it's not connected, you know, to my IRL as much. So it feels more anonymous. And I've experimented with just like, you know, telling people things that people might not normally say and seeing how people react to it. And it's been positive so far. So
That's
mostly
good. That's good.
positive.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's like some people go to a counselor, you could go to a priest and it's for free.
Hmm.
So I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, anyway, we're right here. We're kind of in an hour or so. We've been chatting for a while. Is there anything else we should talk about before we close it out?
No. My ADHD is starting to kick in, losing focus. So it was nice to catch up with you. I just felt compelled to reach out and let you know that, some of what you said, it makes sense to me now after the fact. Now that I have a spiritual experience, it's just like a piece of the puzzle I didn't have to see your perspective. So I just wanted to let you know that. And, I followed your Twitter. So, I'll be tuning in and checking in to.
Yeah, I want to follow your YouTube too, your other channel. I don't even know if I am following it. So if you want to share that with me in a DM or something, I'd
Sure.
love to follow it. And so,
Yeah,
or
it's
if you
just
want to share
it's just my name, Ruby Spacek. If you just look it
oh,
up,
okay.
it'll pop up. But yeah, we'll see if you like the content or not, but
Yeah, no,
it's been a little all over the place.
I like, it's funny because I like listening to different perspectives sometimes. And so, because sometimes I find myself going too much down, say, one path or too much down the
Yeah,
conservative,
same.
and I'm overwhelmed by too much Michael Knowles or something. And then I have to be like, okay, I've got to hear other perspectives or you're going to end
Yeah.
up being that. That was it.
Yep.
So Ash says, this was a refreshing conversation. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, y'all. God bless you both. And
Oh, thank you,
Susan is
Ash.
pointing out that Susan Slamar in here. She's Beyond Order: 12 More Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson.
Oh yes. Yeah, I
So
gotta get that. Well, I might be working at a bookstore starting next week, so I'll have the hookup.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you do end up going to that thing tomorrow, then let me know or take pictures
Cool.
or for videos or something, because I think that's going to be super exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Take care.
So everybody, just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Thank you.